Are you one who is driven by your flesh or led by your spirit? Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, day number 3 of Vayikra. Yesterday, we talked about the altar of transformation, a very vital element in our lives that oftentimes we misunderstand. I also discussed with you at the end of yesterday's portion about the 3 classes of animals that are laid upon this altar: the behemoth, the bakar, and the son. I'd like over the next 3 days talk more about these 3 classes of animals. So today, let's look at the behemoth. This refers classically to livestock, but basically it refers to any animal, whether in a pen or corral or wild in the field or in the jungle. It refers to that which lives by its nature, its instinct. It only knows instinctively how to forage for food, whether foraging in the fields, going to the trough, or going on the hunt. And also to procreate, that is, to replicate itself. There is a great part of humanity that has limited itself to being controlled by its fleshly desires. And that's the easy part. You and I, all we have to do is just do what the body requires, and we are led by the flesh, what comes into our fleshly oriented mind. To be elevated, transformed at the altar, is to learn to live rather by the Ruach, haKodesh, being led by the Spirit. One part drives us, the other part leads us. The animalistic instinct is twofold. Again, to eat and to procreate. It comes down to the basic elements of one who is involved in warfare: fight or flight. Do I stand my ground and defend myself and overcome the adversary? Do I conquer what's in front of me? Or do I retreat and run to live to fight another day? Currently, in our world crisis of the coronavirus, people are running to the grocery stores, emptying shelves, thinking I have to have all of the meat that I can get a hold of, all of the toilet paper that I can store up, all of the vital necessities, because I'm afraid I'm going to be left in my home with not enough to survive. The survival instinct has now manifested itself in the form of greed and hoarding, I think is the proper term. Those who led by the Spirit know that Yah has this. They've heard from Him. They've stored enough and made provisions in the past. And what they need, they simply go out, they get as they need, and they go home. There's not any fear motivating and driving them, but rather they operate with joy, with expectation, with an understanding that the Father has this and that their life is in His hands. Are you being driven? Are you being led? Those that are led by the Ruach go to the altar of transformation. Now, let's go back to the book of Romans, chapter number 12, and let's look again at what Rav Shaul says in chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. I call upon you, therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering. Again, this is an olah, an elevation, a whole or burnt offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, your reasonable worship. And do not be conformed to this world. That's code for do not allow yourself to follow the pattern of the world around you and be led by your flesh. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what is that good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim. So it comes down to, are we walking according to the desires of Elohim, or are we living according to the desires of the flesh? The altar of transformation is the place where we renew our mind. We put the body to death, and that doesn't mean that we beat up our body and that we suffer intentionally, become cruel to our flesh, but rather that we understand I am in control of my flesh. I, my spirit, the man of reality that I'm created to be, that which is focused on and based on the breath of the Creator, not the mud of the earth, I will tell my body what it's going to do. When it comes time to fasting, immediately your body will say to you through your mind, we're going to starve to death. We missed the first meal and we think that we will faint or pass out before we can get to the next meal. A wise pastor many years ago said in such an instance that he would say out loud to himself, "Body, I will tell you when it's time to eat. I am not going to be controlled by my stomach growling. Your stomach will tell you, I'm empty, I must have nutrition. You're going to die if you don't feed me." However, the man of the Spirit can rise up in that moment and state to himself, we are fine, we'll eat when I say so. Let's go over to the 1 John chapter 2. Verse 15 says, "Do not love the world, nor that which is in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Because all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but of the world." Verse 17, "And the world passes away, and the lust of it, but the one doing the desire of Elohim lives forever." If you connect this to Romans chapter 12, verse 2, then we understand that when we transform ourselves at the altar of transformation, we take on the desires of Elohim, then it's no longer the world that we're living for, but the desire of Elohim, and that we live forever. If you live according to the basic instinctive desires of the body, eventually the body is going to die, and that's all that you have. But those who live according to the will of the Spirit, the desire of Elohim, you live forever. Now, how is this accomplished? I'm glad you asked that question. It is at the altar of transformation. What I mean by that is an animal that is common, ordinary, it's deemed perfect in its form, it's clean, it's without flaw, its blood is let out, its life is exposed, and its flesh is laid on the altar. The animal that was chewing cud or roaming through the pens a little while ago has now been laid on the altar, and it is set apart. Once this animal is set apart, it cannot be treated commonly any longer. It must follow the protocols that Yah has given pertaining to the altar, depending upon what kind of offering that it is. Whether it's completely consumed, whether a portion is consumed by the priest, or whether it's shared by the priest and the one who presents it. Yah determines how this set-apart offering then is to be treated. When we sacrifice our behemoth, the flesh of us, it is the seeking to rise above the mere cycles of life. I'm no longer living to live and put off death as long as possible, but now I'm beginning to craft my mind. I'm beginning to shape my way of thinking. I'm not just procreating and raising up a generation to succeed me, but I'm beginning to raise up individuals to walk according to the commands of the Most High. I'm shaping lives. I'm developing relationships. I am married not just to have a spouse to handle the carnal desires of the flesh, but rather I have a spouse to walk with me and to enjoy the presence of the Most High with, to converse with, to grow with, to be changed with. And it is to take this body that we've been given and use it as instruments of righteousness instead of giving in to the carnal desires. It is to take survival and turn it into grace. Grace that I receive to empower me to do what is righteous, and also grace to extend to others. It is instead of looking for retribution and revenge, I'm looking for an opportunity to show mercy. Instead of exacting my will, I am looking for the will of the Father among us. Instead of the individual, I'm walking in community. It is a place of turning my life around to a higher level of being, living according to the Spirit and not being driven by the flesh. We'll continue this tomorrow, and until then, shalom.